What's good, everybody? Today we're going to explore a dark chapter in U.S. history. Executive Order 9066, signed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1942. This order authorized the forced relocation and internment of over 120,000 Japanese Americans during World War II, most of whom were U.S. citizens. Let's delve into the historical context, the implementation of the order, and its lasting impact. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, bringing the United States into World War II. In the aftermath of the attack, fear and suspicion towards Japanese Americans grew rapidly. Despite no evidence of espionage or sabotage, Japanese Americans were viewed as potential threats to national security. This fear was fueled by long-standing racial prejudice and economic competition. On the West Coast, where the majority of Japanese Americans lived, politicians, media outlets, and military leaders called for their removal. President Franklin D. Roosevelt responded by signing Executive Order 9066 on February 19, 1942. Executive Order 9066 authorized the security of war and military commanders to designate certain areas as military zones and exclude any persons from these zones. While the order did not explicitly mention Japanese Americans, it was used to target them exclusively. Over 120,000 Japanese Americans, two-thirds of whom were U.S. citizens, were forced to leave their homes, businesses, and communities. They were given only days to prepare and could only bring what they could carry. Families were sent to internment camps located in remote areas of the country. The internment camps were surrounded by barbed wire and guarded by armed soldiers. Families lived in cramped, poorly constructed barracks with little privacy. They faced harsh weather, inadequate medical care, and a lack of basic amenities. Despite these conditions, Japanese Americans worked to create a sense of normalcy. They established schools, churches, and community activities. Many even volunteered to serve in the U.S. military, proving their loyalty to a country that had justly imprisoned them. Not all Japanese Americans accepted their internment without resistance. Fred Korematsu, Gordon Hirabayashi, and Mitsui Indo challenged the constitutionality of Executive Order 9066 in court. While the Supreme Court initially upheld the order in the cases like Korematsu versus United States, these legal battles laid the groundwork for future civil rights advancements. In 1944, the government began to close the camps and the Japanese Americans were allowed to return home. Many found that their homes and businesses had been lost or destroyed. They faced ongoing discrimination and struggled to rebuild their lives. The internment of Japanese Americans left a lasting scar in the nation's conscience. In 1988, President Ronald Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act, which formally apologized for the internment and provided reparations of $20,000 to each surviving detainee. The act acknowledged that the internment was based on race prejudice, war hysteria, and a failure of political leadership. It serves as a reminder of the dangers of fear and prejudice in times of crisis. Executive Order 9066 and the internment of Japanese Americans are stark reminders of how fear and prejudice can lead to grave injustices. They challenge us to uphold the principles of equality and justice even in times of uncertainty. Thank you for joining me on this journey through history. Let's remember the lessons of the past as we work towards a more just and inclusive future. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep making history. I'm Daryl Omar, and I'll see you soon.